From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
A raid in Kayla's name. The White House announcing on Sunday that the operation that killed an ISIS leader was named in honor of slain Arizonan Kayla Mueller.
With the shocking statistics of breast cancer diagnosis, more women are being genetically tested for breast cancer. See how that's helping to detect the cancer earlier.
Plus, drone technology and how it's helping the farm industry in the most innovative of ways. Cronkite News takes you up and above for an in-depth look.
Cronkite News starts now.
Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News on Arizona PBS. I'm Jennifer Alvarez.
And I'm Matthew Roy. Thank you for joining us tonight.
The military operation that killed an ISIS leader was named after an Arizona woman held hostage by the terrorist organization.
Kayla Mueller from Prescott was kidnapped and forced to marry Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
Jody Guerrero has been looking into the Arizona connection to this story and joins us from the control room.
President Trump has been the top national security priority of his administration. This is what he's been focusing on. I spoke with a Syrian community leader about the effects of Arizona native Kayla Mueller's story and the ISIS leader's death. President Trump announced over the weekend what he considers a victory against terrorism.
Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. He was the founder and leader of ISIS.
In 2013, Prescott native Kayla Mueller traveled to Syria with her boyfriend. He was a contractor with Doctors Without Borders. Before Kayla could return home, ISIS raided her bus and captured her. According to officials, she was forced into marriage, raped, and murdered. Syrian community leaders reacted to President Trump's announcement. In the Valley, Usama Shami is the president of the Phoenix Islamic Community Center. Although he doesn't agree with all of the president's decisions, he thinks this was a good one.
This is an issue that all Muslims have been following, especially here in Phoenix with the connection to Kayla Mueller. And there are a lot of people have lost relatives to ISIS because the first victims of ISIS were Muslims that lived in either Iraq or in Syria.
On Saturday night, the Special Operations Forces cornered al-Baghdadi. He set off his own explosive vest, killing himself. Cronkite News reached out to the Mueller family, but has not received a response as of this broadcast. In the control room, Jody Guerrero, Cronkite News.
Republican members of our congressional delegation are reacting to the death of the ISIS leader on Twitter. Senator Martha McSally posted, "Incredibly grateful to the Special Forces team who carried out the raid in Syria against the dangerous and well-known leader of ISIS. The world is a safer place because of the bravery of our Special Forces." Congressman Paul Gosar tweeted, "Kayla was tortured and slain at the hands of al-Baghdadi, but his reign of terror has finally ended. I am grateful for President Trump for honoring Kayla's life and for the brave men and women in uniform who carried out this mission." And Congressman Andy Biggs tweeted, "I thank our brave military and praise the leadership of the Commander-in-Chief, President Donald Trump, in the elimination of one of the world's worst terrorists."
Native Americans are among the most underrepresented groups working in science and medicine. But a new effort on the Navajo Nation is trying to reverse that disparity. Cronkite News reporter Ricky Cornish is here to tell us about the new program. Ricky?
A $1.3 million grant is going to the University of Arizona and the Navajo Nation's DNA College. They'll work together to help propel Native students into top research universities to study neuroscience. Science. It attracts people around the world, but a new opportunity will give students the option to turn it into a career.
I think everybody thinks, hey, the brain's cool and complicated, and how could you understand, your own mind?
And I think this is the beginning. This is a beginning of a long journey together for great advances in neuroscience.
The grant from the National Institutes of Health will go toward training students in a career field lacking diversity.
When we were doing our research, there was only one Native American in academics who was a neuroscientist. We hope to expand that exponentially.
But the point of this project isn't necessarily to train Navajo neuroscientists. It's to use neuroscience to build a stairway to get our students into graduate school.
The first group of fellows will study in a year-long program that takes place at Diné College during the fall and spring semesters before wrapping up in the summer at U of A.
They will receive a stipend during their time at Diné that frees them up from having to have a job. They'll have housing in the dorms, food in the dorms, and then a stipend for their time here in the summer as well.
Every great teacher learns from their students, and the program will shine a light on the Navajo community.
They're going to be leading us on that journey. And where innovation really happens is actually when you bring these two different bodies of knowledge together. And it's a wonderful opportunity to now return that gift.
The things that my students teach me about their way of life is incredibly rich.
With an emphasis on studying treatments and cures for brain disorders like dementia, the program directors hope to send change makers into the world.
But ultimately what I'd like to do is have neuroscientists that can go back and properly treat the diseases that are inherent in the Native American population.
Help them find a foothold or a fingerhold to begin to climb that ladder of success.
Students must be enrolled at Diné College to apply for the program. At the digital desk, Ricky Cornish, Cronkite News.
Since 2012, mining has been prohibited on just over 1 million acres of federal land around the Grand Canyon, a moratorium that's set to expire in 2032. But now some in Congress are working to make that ban permanent, as Hannah Ehrlich reports from our Washington bureau.
It's called the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act because it was introduced on the park's 100th anniversary. And the bill's supporters say their aim is to protect the canyon for many centuries to come.
We need to make sure that those seeps and springs and waters, the life-giving waters of the Grand Canyon, are protected into perpetuity for the communities that live there, for native tribes that live there, and for wildlife.
Arizona Democratic Representative Raul Grijalva is the lead sponsor of the bill, which would make permanent the ban on uranium and other mining on more than 1,006,000 acres of land surrounding the canyon. Backers say the risk from mining is too great near a national treasure like the canyon.
These parks are in potential jeopardy if we don't stay on the ball and pay attention to them and what goes on next to them.
But critics like Arizona Republican Congressman Paul Gosar say the land affected is not even near the canyon. He accused Grijalva of fear-mongering, saying in a statement that environmental impact statements have shown that mining in the Arizona Strip poses no risk to water sources, recreation, or the Grand Canyon. Gosar and fellow Arizona Republican Representative Debbie Lesko will try to amend the bill tonight to delay its implementation or call for a study of its impact. But Rook of Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility said the time for study is past, and he fears what the Trump administration might allow without the law.
There were good reasons for the moratorium, there's good reasons for the legislation, and it's unclear what the Trump administration will do with it should it reach the president's desk.
All 5 Arizona Democrats are co-sponsors on the bill, which is expected to be voted on by the full House this week. In Washington, Hannah Ehrlich, Cronkite News.
The House committee is meeting right now to consider the amendments proposed by Gosar, Lesko, and other Republicans. But with Democrats holding 9 of the 13 seats on the Rules Committee, the amendments are unlikely to be added to the bill before it moves to the full House. Coming up on Cronkite News at 5, find out how BRCA genes are linked to breast cancers.
And how genetic testing can help with early detection.
We'll explain who should get tested and how the process works.
Plus, Maricopa County assessor facing federal charges now has some time off the job after a vote today. Details coming up.
With wildfires, a scarcity of water, and other environmental issues facing the Earth today, it's critical to stay up to date with local impacts of a changing climate. That's why we created Elemental, Covering Sustainability, a multimedia collaboration between public television and radio stations. From climate change to water conservation to renewable energy and much more, Elemental covers the latest in sustainability news. Find our stories on our website, elementalreports.com.
Cronkite Noticias is the Spanish-speaking division of Cronkite News, covering topics such as economics, education, sustainability, immigration, and border relations. Cronkite Noticias strives to serve the Spanish-speaking community in Arizona. Under the guidance of prominent Spanish-speaking professionals, students at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism develop content for our broadcast partner, Univision, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. Explore Cronkite Noticias at cronkitenoticias.azpbs.org.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Exploring, it's the lifeblood of the mission.
Human beings are a curious bunch.
What are we going to see when we get really close?
Wow.
Just because an idea is crazy, it's not necessarily wrong.
We were on our way.
You don't get anywhere until you've tested the limits.
That carries an intensity you can't imagine.
You could hear people just, whoa.
Oh my God, absolutely spectacular.
It's a rush.
We ask a lot of our heroes.
We are at a remarkable moment.
We're going farther than any exploration ever has.
Millions of people die every year from drinking dirty water. I would never have felt I had the ability to do something without ASU pushing me. We built filtration systems out of local materials with the people to see those kids drink clean water for the first time. It's the most rewarding feeling that you can ever have. I went to ASU because I wanted to change the world. The thing I never would have expected is how the world would have changed me.
Every 2 minutes, a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer in the U.S., with 10 to 15% of those cases being hereditary.
Cronkite News reporter Ashley Stewart spoke with medical officials about genetic testing and how vital it is.
Increased awareness and more accessible testing are all factors of prevention. Genetic testing plays a large role in early detection of breast cancer.
In families where there's a very extensive history of cancer, many generations, and many with the same type of cancer, that should set off an alarm bell in that family.
Donald Northfelt, an oncologist at the Mayo Clinic, says BRCA genes 1 and 2 are responsible for the majority of genetic predispositions to breast cancer.
People are born with BRCA mutations, and so any tissue in their body can be tested looking for that mutation. Any cell in the body should carry that mutation if the patient has BRCA mutation.
According to the National Breast Cancer Foundation, approximately 45% of women with BRCA gene 2 mutation will have breast cancer by age 70. Madison Lafleur, a genetics counselor with Honor Health, says regardless of a positive or negative test result, there must be a process that is followed.
We're going to have to change your screening if you have a family history, or it's going to have implications for your family members because we might still want to test other people that could be at risk for a genetic mutation, even though you tested negative.
Genetic testing is recommended if a person or their family has a history of cancer, or there is a known inherited mutation.
How will this testing affect family members, and what can we do to hopefully put them at ease? And if they get a positive result, how can we work with them to get them through the initial shock and make sure that they're getting the correct screening that they need?
Dr. Northfelt says the best way to approach genetic testing is to work through your doctor and your medical insurance. Live in the newsroom, I'm Ashley Stewart, Cronkite News.
Today, Paul Peterson, the Maricopa County assessor accused of leading an illegal adoption fraud and human smuggling scheme, was suspended from his job for 120 days. Peterson allegedly brought women to the U.S. from the Marshall Islands to give birth for adoptions that he organized. Today, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors voted to suspend him for 120 days without pay. Peterson refuses to resign and will still receive his salary. On Friday, a Utah judge changed Peterson's bail to $150,000 instead of the original $3 million. Charges against Peterson sprawl across Arizona, Arkansas, and Utah and include human smuggling, a sale of a child, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. His now former lawyer says Peterson's business did not break the law.
Coming up next on Cronkite News, the uses for drone technology in the farm industry.
And how it's helping the industry cut down on the use of water. Cronkite News takes you up and above for an in-depth look.
On the go. At Cronkite News, we work hard to report the facts and keep you updated, whether we're on set or on the scene.
Taking it from the studio to the field. So I'm here in South Phoenix.
In Phoenix, we're just a click away. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or find us online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
By the year 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Before Professor Halden, I had an insane amount of passion, but I almost felt helpless because I didn't know how to use it. Professor Halden gave me a chance to make a difference. Being at a place like ASU allows you to take these big leaps. Ultimately, the biggest problems in the world cannot be solved alone.
Scientists in Arizona are experimenting with technology that helps farmers get the most out of their crops while also conserving our most valuable resource. Reporter Dylan McKim got to see how farmers are taking to the sky to get a closer look at their fields.
Gone are the days of farmers walking their fields.
I'm gonna go now.
Now they take to the air with drones.
I don't really do anything to fly it. It's all on autopilot right now.
Kelly Thorpe, an agricultural engineer, uses drones to take detailed images of his plants that show the condition of the field.
They're a very powerful technology to be able to go out and regularly map fields, giving you regular information from which you can make decisions from.
Decisions like how to use our most valuable resource, water.
If we can make those decisions more accurate, then we know that we're being more efficient in our water use.
It's an alternative to conventional farming in the sense of using information to guide decisions on input use.
After the drone is done with its flight, Kelly and his team will analyze the data and then tell this machine right here how much water each plot of crop needs.
So what I end up with at the end of all that is essentially a map of my field that is sectioned into smaller areas that can receive differential amounts of water.
This allows Thorpe to give the right amount of water to each area of the field.
That I think that the drones offer a very promising future for coming up with ways to make our agricultural decision-making more resource efficient.
In Maricopa, Dylan McKim, Cronkite News.
Kelly and his team have been testing on cotton fields for the past year and are now looking to expand their research to other crops. Our weather reporter Jordan Evans is here, and you're a licensed drone pilot. How hard do you think that is for them?
It's actually kind of interesting to see how it gets used for other purposes besides, like I use it here in the newsroom, for our stories and stuff. But hey, you know what? I don't recommend tying a skeleton to your drone this week for Halloween.
It'd scare me, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh. No Halloween spirit there, huh, Jordan?
No Halloween spirit there, but hey, if you're down for some cold weather, we've got it this week. Let's jump into things right now. In fact, check out our temperatures. We're about 10 degrees cooler than where we were yesterday. Right now, we're only at 72 degrees, which is about 12 degrees cooler than our normal for this time of year. What's also interesting are these dew points. We're seeing dew points at 10 degrees, which is the temperature at which the temperature at which the air would have to reach saturation. So what that means is we would have to cool our air temperature all the way down to 10 degrees to get any rain, which would actually be in the form of snow here in the valley. So we're not going to see that happen at all here in that forecast. For that evening planner tonight, 60s by 7 o'clock with 50s by the 11 o'clock hour. So it's jackets tonight. And those breezes will be a little bit gusty too out of the northwest at about 5 miles per hour. We got another cold front coming in. In fact, here's the one that came through today. That's what dropped our temperatures earlier this morning. And then by Tuesday, we're going to see that next cold front come into the state, which means breezes pick up out ahead of it. And then behind that cold front are the cooler temperatures. And we're talking about the coldest temperatures that we have seen so far this season here across the state. So we'll dive into that here in just a minute. But the dry air is also going to be moving in also. And if you thought the air was plenty dry today, well, it's going to be getting even drier. Check out dew points ahead of that cold front. By the time it gets down into here, through the portions of our state, we're going to see those dew points drop into the negatives, which means the air is going to be extremely dry. You want to double up on the lotion and the chapstick this week because it's going to be uncomfortably dry out there later this week across the state. Winds tonight are going to be pretty calm, but by the time we get into tomorrow, we'll see them pick up across the high country areas along I-40. We'll see those gusts approach 40 miles per hour, and the Colorado River Valley will tap into some of that too by the time we get into Tuesday night. So that's something to keep in mind for tomorrow evening, which means red flag warnings will be in place out there across the Colorado River Valley, and I do anticipate them to pick up across the high country heading into tomorrow evening also, because we have the dry air and the winds in place, so fire danger is going to be a big concern across the state later this week. Lows tonight down to the teens across the high country and low 40s here across the lower deserts, and high temperatures in the 50s and 60s up north with 70s here in the Valley of the Sun too. Again, about 10 degrees cooler than what we should be for this time of year. So if you're heading out to that Cardinals game forecast, actually they're taking on the San Francisco 49ers. They're on Halloween itself. We got kickoff at 5:20 and temperatures in the low 70s for that kickoff temperature. So a little bit cooler than what we should be for this time of year, but still looking pretty great and comfortable for that kickoff game forecast. Now for Halloween, here's what it looks like for those trick-or-treaters at 7 o'clock, 60s by the 7 o'clock hour, and all the way back down to the 50s by the time we wrap things up there at 9 o'clock. So you might want to have that jacket or layer up on your costume because it's going to be a little bit chilly here in the valley and freezing up north. So keep that in mind if you're trick-or-treating out across the high country. Now for that 7-day forecast, Wednesday will be the coolest day of the next 7 with lows down into the 40s there. In fact, we could see some spots in the valley actually get below 40 degrees. But notice by the weekend, Jenny and Matthew, it's back into the 80s. We're back into that normal temperature range for this time of year.
A local high school volleyball game ending in tears.
Members of the crowd have been accused of making racist gestures at Indigenous players throughout Tuesday night's game. Cronkite News has the full story after the break.
From the children of planet Earth.
Exploring, it's the lifeblood of the mission.
Human beings are a curious bunch.
What are we going to see when we get really close?
Just because an idea is crazy, it's not necessarily wrong.
We were on our way.
You don't get anywhere until you've tested the limits.
That carries an intensity you can't imagine.
You could hear people just, whoa.
Oh my God, absolutely spectacular.
It's a rush.
We ask a lot of our heroes.
We are at a remarkable moment.
We're going farther than any exploration ever has.
New discussions on racism in sports have sprung up in the days since a volleyball game at a Phoenix area high school. Last week's game was stopped after some in the crowd allegedly made racist gestures toward Indigenous players.
Cronkite News reporter Madison LaBerge lets us in on the conversation.
Last week, players for Salt River High School reported being called savages by people watching the volleyball game against Karis Academy. It was the latest in a string of unfortunate incidents of racism, according to a spokesperson for Salt River High School. And language was not the only indignity.
Taunted with a very racist gesture. It's called the war whoop. Usually it's accompanied by stereotypical sounds of what folks used to claim Native Americans in general made on the war path.
And Walker says that racism against Native Americans in sports starts on the national level.
There are teams that use racist images and words to describe their teams that are anti-Native. And that makes it okay for a lot of folks to also use those words against us.
Walker tells me that the governing board for their athletic program, the Canyon Athletic Association, has pledged to work on ways to prevent forms of racial discrimination before it happens. This way, they can create policies and specific sanctions to promote inclusion and diversity. Madison LaBerge, Cronkite News.
Cronkite News is proud to be the news division of Arizona PBS. Here's what's coming up on Arizona Horizon and the PBS NewsHour.
On the next Arizona Horizon, we'll hear from the State Manufacturers Association about the variety of things made in Arizona and a look at the rights of those who take their pets to their places of work.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, wildfires are burning out of control across northern and southern California. Coming up after Cronkite News and Arizona Horizon on Arizona PBS.
That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.
For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.